Namaste, Suprabhatam, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our viewers from wherever you have joined us. It gives me immense pleasure to invite all of you for this session today. We are on the 18th day of the festival, the Global Festival of Yoga, that is celebrating, that is discussing healing, well being, and wisdom. And we are also trying to find different ways in which these topics can be understood by practitioners, by people who have gone into the philosophical aspect, those who are looking at it from an applicational aspect. We had yesterday Rutger Kortenhorst, who spoke to us on wellness through yoga and Ayurveda and Irish experience. Rutger ji is from Holland, but he's now based in Ireland since many years. And he was telling us how he has been able to introduce all these Ayurveda and yoga as a program of well-being in the Irish curriculum itself, which is quite phenomenal. And he was very well versed in Sanskrit. He spoke of the importance of Sanskrit in this whole process. Today we have with us another wonderful Sanskrit scholar and someone whom I'm very close to also, and I refer to as Pitashi because we've had some great adventures together learning Sanskrit and especially learning how to speak it and share it with others. So may I welcome Vladimir Yatsenko ji to come on screen. So Vladimir ji is joining us from the US, and he is, like I told you, a scholar of Sanskrit. He's done his master's in the language and in literature. And he's also done his study general and theoretical linguists. He's a PhD in Indian philosophy. He's doing research in the field of Vedic and Vedantic studies, Indian philosophy, philosophy of language, and integral yoga psychology. Vladimir ji was a visiting professor of Sanskrit and Integral Studies at Oro University in Surat and a facilitator at the University of Human Unity, which is a project of Auroville, where he spent several years. A great scholar also of Sri Aurobindonian philosophy. He taught also at the Indian Psychology Institute in Pondicherry and International Center of it, and presently he is the life visiting member at Sri Aurobindo Integral Life Center, the Fountain Inn in the USA. He has also taught at the Center of Integral Studies in New Delhi and Sakhar in Pondicherry. So, a very varied background, but someone who is deeply passionate about Vedas, about Upanishads, about the Gita, and my interaction with him um, has been very humbling because of his dedicated study of these sacred texts and his contemplative understanding of what these texts really have to offer to us in today's world. So with these few words, Vladimir ji, over to you, and you're going to talk to us about health and healing in integral yoga, and also from the Vedic perspective, really based on Sri Aurobindo's interpretation of these texts. Looking forward eagerly to your deep wisdom and insight on this topic. Thank you very much for joining us. We have our audience who's here. Would you like the chat box to be open as we go through the session, or what would you be comfortable with?
Well, it can be anything, question and answers. Also,
Right.
people can put their questions and.
Sure. So we'll leave the chat box open, and then we can take the question and answers at the end, as we always do. So please put your question and answers in the Q&A box. So with these words, over to you. Mahan santoshaha kripaya asman prabodhayatu iti.
Dhanyavada.
Sambodhayatu prabodhayatu cha iti prarthaye. Namaste.
Dhanyavada. Um, Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Anuradha, for this beautiful introduction and for this kind of warm introduction, and uh, which is less formal but closer to the truth. And definitely all my life I was looking for the answers rather than for the scholarship. Scholarship was the means to receive some, experiences and some opening to the forces of consciousness which hide behind those texts. So texts were the means to discover the truth. And when I arrived at Sri Aurobindo's vision of integral yoga, I found my answers. Answers are given. Now they have to be lived, they have to be tried out, they have to be experienced. We know the answers, yeah? Only we have to now live according to them. And today is a very challenging topic. Usually I don't speak on healing because I have nothing to do with this topic. You see, I'm a linguist and I would rather speak on philosophy or on the Vedas. But at the same time, this topic of healing and health is provoking some thinking. And I was just thinking how to present it. So I will start from this view. I tried to do this before in IPI, and it's quite a challenging task for me to speak about healing or health. What is integral health? What it could be? We should look into the question of what is really a human being then. What is this human being? Is it meant to stay unchanged? Or it is meant to develop and grow and constantly change? And why are we fighting with some resistance in nature? Why do we have this resistance of death, mortality, disease, decay, decline? Why are these forces facing us? And where are we heading at through all this darkness, as it were, which is opposing us on our journey? In the Veda, man is called as ever advancing pilgrim who is constantly on the way, evolutionary being who is constantly moving forward. As Sri Aurobindo says, human being, man is the transitional being. It's not the being which is meant to stay. And in that sense, that holistic view on health is impossible. He will be constantly changing his form and moving forward. And certain forms of him have to die and fall back, and new forms are to be born. He is constantly on his journey, constantly fighting with these forces of resistance, of death and decline. In the Rig Veda, we have this phrase, Abhisyama Pritsutir Martyanam. May we withstand Abhisyama. May we withstand the oppression of mortals. The oppressions of mortals, of mortality, we have to withstand and to meet it and to face it. There is a constant journey, constant battlefield with these forces. So what are these forces? Where they are coming from, and why do we have to face them, as it were? And if we look at the Veda, we will see that if we identify ourselves with the Yajamana, with the person who is here to sacrifice, and what is the sacrifice? The idea of sacrifice is a constant transformation of the nature, which we inherited, constant dealing with our nature, which we inherited, by the powers of consciousness, deeper consciousness in us. So that Yajamana within the heart, that luminous being, that Antaryamin or Antaratma within our heart, Angushtamatra Purusha, Hridi Guhayam, in the cave of the heart, hidden within, he is to come to the front and to face all the resistance in our mind, in our life force, or prana, or antariksha. These are all the words which cover this world of life force and physical being. And all of these levels of Manomaya Purusha, Pranamaya Purusha, and Annamaya Purusha are the forces of nature which Purusha put on himself, took on himself, and deals with constantly. We inherited nature, we took nature onto ourselves. Now, this nature is to transform and to become the embodiment of Purusha, is to become total embodiment. And then only when all these levels of nature are transformed, not only harmonized, and harmonized, then we can speak about something like integral health. Otherwise, it's always on the way. So what is disease actually? What is pain? Is pain an enemy actually? If we look into Sanskrit language, we will see that pain has very interesting words like Vedana. Yeah? Vedana is the one which points out, which makes us aware of where we have to attach our consciousness, yeah? Bring our attention. So Vedana tells us that, look, here is the problem. Please pay attention. You know that in India, this is a very nice example, there are people who do not have fingers and they lose all the fingers and all the toes. Without fingers and toes, sometimes beggars are coming to you. And I didn't know this, but I found out that actually this is not a disease. I thought it was some kind of, maybe bacteria or some, chemical problem or biological problem. It's not that. They lost the sense of pain. And by losing the sense of pain, they started to pay less and less attention to their injuries. And slowly, over time, they lost all their fingers and all of their toes because they started to hit them again and again until they destroyed their hands. This is something to think of. By the way, pain is protecting us, making us aware and conscious of where we have to apply our consciousness, where we have to pay attention to the development of our bodies. Or there is another word for pain or for the disease, vyadhi. It's also an interesting word. Vyadhi is from root vyadh, vidhyati, yes, the fourth class root, to pierce. It's something which is piercing us, which is entering into our system. We are living, and mother describes, the mother, the partner of Sri Aurobindo, describes diseases as something, some forces of nature which are coming from outside and piercing our consciousness and enter into our consciousness. And we, she says, are aware of this. In some part of ourselves, we are aware of that piercing and we allow it to come. If we are aware and we don't allow it to come, it cannot enter. Disease cannot enter. But somehow, somewhere we are weak or we are not totally attentive, and something in us allows it to come in. And once it is in, it is much more difficult to get rid of. We have to cast it out, as it were. But even if then we don't pay attention, it becomes settled and it it rules from within, and then it is much more difficult to cure it. So it's always piercing coming from outside, and we can be aware of it and cast it away before it comes in. Or there is another word, roga, yes, from ruj. Ruj root, rujyati is to to break. It's something is breaking within us for this force to come in. Or there is another pida. Pida is some kind of tormenting force. Or dukkha, something which creates a spoiled space in us. Some inner space is becoming spoiled. Dush, from dush, yes, from here we have also prefix dur, and so on. So dushti, dushtam, spoiled, dushyati, getting spoiled. And there is another word, sukha. Sukha is a good space, yeah, the happiness. So if you look at all these kind of words, and there are many more words for pain and disease, we can see that they are functional and they are telling us what is happening to us in our journey, that we interact with outer nature, and that outer nature has its own powers, um, its own forces which enter into our own domain within us. So if we look at the idea of the Gita, we can see that Gita and integral yoga are very closely related. Yeah? We can see karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and jnana yoga, three yogas, which Sri Aurobindo also uses in his integral yoga, purna yoga, the integral yoga. And the idea of the Gita is to become yukta, to become totally united, to become totally composed. And what is to be united? We usually translate it in the sense that we have to unite with our higher consciousness. And once we unite with our divine presence within us, then we are yogis. It is very true. But there is also something else to take place, and that is to be composed, where the mind, heart, and body, will in the body, are to be united. Not only we, some abstract we, to be united with some abstract divine, but also our mind, our thoughts, our hearts, and our wills are to be one. What we do, think, and what we feel has to be one. And to become one, we can do it, we can unite it, build it around our true center, which is within the heart, our psychic being, as Sri Aurobindo calls it, or that very antaratman, which is present within the heart. If we center all these powers of nature, of the mind, vital, and body around this center, and allow this innermost center to come to the front, then we are united. Then there is the beginning of the transformation. And Sri Aurobindo speaks about three transformations in his yoga, which are leading to a complete integral health. And that is psychic transformation, where the inner being comes to the front and takes possession of our mental, vital, and physical being. It's a first psychic transformation where we perceive the divine in our individual consciousness. Then there is spiritual transformation, when this being which is in front is growing and embracing by its own presence the whole universe, all the forces, where we can see ourselves in all beings and all beings in ourselves, as Isha Upanishad beautifully describes. And that is the spiritual transformation, to see the divine in every being, and every being in the divine and in oneself. And finally, These two transformations are leading to the highest supramental transformation, where we are shifting to another stage from Manomaya Purusha to Vijnanamaya Purusha, to the higher transcendental being. And that being in Vijnanamaya Purusha, on the level of that supramental consciousness, the consciousness and power are one and the same. And that generates a total harmony. Our major disharmony, our major fight is between consciousness is not matching the power. The power is delayed. The power is not in unison with consciousness. But once they are in unison, once the light of consciousness and the power are one and the same, then there is no more to be healed. We are totally healed and we become immortal beings. Immortality is the final integral health. And before we are immortal, we will have much to deal with still. So there is no healing. Healing, the final healing is immortality. And it's quite interesting how Indian tradition deals with these levels. If we take Taittiriya, we could see that the constant change of form is mentioned all the time. There is Annam and there is Annadaha. Yes. There is the food or the matter and there is the eater of food. So there is a being within the food. We are on one side food, ahamannam, 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 and we are the eater of food. Ahamannado, ahamannado, ahamannadaha. We are both. We are the embodied being and we are the embodiment. And that embodiment is constantly changing and transforming. So being the food, we are feeding the whole manifestation with the energy which is to be constantly transformed. And that's what we are here to do, to offer, constantly to offer what we are, what comes to us. Our being, our mental, vital and physical being is built from the elements of nature. Some of you know most probably of Jyotisha, where all the nakshatras and grahas and all the devatas behind nakshatras are investing into our being. In a particular moment of time, we enter into this manifestation, and according to Indian tradition, all their forces are coming to us and invest into our being. Invest into our mind, into our vitality, our emotional being, into our physical being, the elements with which we have to deal. It's our bodies, our extension, our yugas, as it were, extension in time and space. And that embodiment, the beginning and the end of our life, is a constant sacrifice, constant dealing with these energies by our yajamana, by the soul which came here to be embodied. So if we look at this from this point of view, we will see that when Taittiriya speaks about what we are built from, it's quite beautiful. Maybe you remember, Anadhyeva Kalvimani Bhutani Jayante. It is from the matter all the beings are being born. Annena Jatani Jivanti. And by the matter they live. Annam Prayanti Abhisamvishanti. And into the matter they go after. And then he continues, Prana dhyeva kalvimani bhutani jayante. It is from prana that all the beings are being born. By prana they live, into the prana they go. And then it is from the mind that all the beings are being born. So we are born from mind, vital and physical. These are the investments of nature. And we, the Purusha, take onto ourselves these natures and deal with them. These natures are constantly in a flux. They are constantly being offered by Yajamana, by Purusha within, to their higher and higher capacity, to their higher and higher increase of consciousness in them until they become totally composed and united around the innermost center. And at the end, Taittiriya gives this very beautiful insight, which we could here quote, and maybe at this we can stop at this idea of what it is to be totally healthy. If you remember, Sayaschayam Purushe Yascha Savaditye Saekaha Saya Evam Vit Asmarlokat Pretya Etamannamayamaatmanamupasamkramya. Having joined this self made out of matter, etam pranamayamatmanamupasamkramya, having joined this self made out of prana, etam manomayamatmanamupasamkramya, having joined this self made out of mind, etam vijnanamayamaatmanamupasamkramya, having joined completely this self made of the supermind. Etad anandamayamat, etam anandamayamatmanamupasamkramya, having joined the self made out of Atman, after Ananda, bliss, transcendental bliss of Satchitananda. Iman lokan kamani kamarupyanu sancharan. Iman lokan kamani kamarupyanu sancharan. Etat samagayan naste. This is the most beautiful vision. He joins these worlds, all of these worlds, from the most material to the most spiritual, at will. He partakes of them at will, kamani. He takes any food at will. He enjoys all of them at will. Kamarupyanu sancharan. He follows them, taking any form at will. He can be material, vital, mental, supramental, and transcendental being. And he etat sama gayan aste, and he, following all these worlds, sitting immobile, and sings this saman. And the saman is actually the realization of that absolute being on all the levels. Havu, 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 ahamannam, 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 ahamannado, hamannado, hamannada. I am food, I am food, I am food. 3 times. I am matter, embodiment. I am the stuff which is to constantly change. I am the eater of this food. I am the eater of food. I am the eater of food on all 3 levels, on the mind, vital, and physical level. Ahanga shloka krit, ahanga shloka krit, ahanga shloka krit. I am the creator of the word, of the verse. I am the creator of shloka. I am the creator of shloka. Ahamasmi prathamajaridasya. I am the firstborn of the truth. Purvam devebhyo amritasya na bhai. Before the gods, in the navel of immortality, Yoma dadati saideva ma vaha. Who gives me, who sacrifices me, he is indeed nourishing me. Ahamannamannamadantama. I am the food who eats the eater of food. Aham Vishvam Bhuvanamabhyabhavam. I overcame the whole world. Suvarna Jyoti, the all golden light. Ya evam Veda Ityupanishad. And who knows thus? This is the Upanishad. This is the ecstatic ending of Taittiriya, the total realization, total unity with the lowest and the highest put together in one being. And that would be the aim of our vision of holistic integral health. Until then, we have much to do. Okay, I will stop here and I will open, I would love to hear your questions and have some discussion on these topics.
Bahu dhanyavadaha Mahodaya for this Vedic and Upanishadic treat, and also taking us into the subtler dimensions of consciousness underlying these words. Ativa Sundaram, Ativa Manoharam.
Thank you.
So we have one question, because you spoke of identifying the divine presence within us. And around us. So that is also one way in which we can reach our immortality or connect to the inherent deva within us and achieve some immortality. So Raghavanji is saying, beautifully explained, please guide me how to feel the presence of divine around us.
Around us, there is much to be done. Everything which is outside us, you will notice that the deeper we go within, the more we are aware of some intrinsic value, some deeper value. The more we are without, the less we are aware of the divine presence. So to say, we are built in such a way that gradually, from within to without, we are becoming less and less conscious. Yeah? So when we come to our surface consciousness, we are less conscious of ourselves than we are within. In the mind, we are more aware of ourselves. In the vital, we are less aware. In the physical, less aware. In the surrounding consciousness, even less aware. And we are not aware of others at all. And if you look at others, why we are not aware of them? Yeah, we have no contact with them. We think they are somebody else. They have their own. They are not me. Yeah? And that is not totally true. So until we feel that way, until we don't see ourselves in every being and all the beings in ourselves, that spiritual transformation, that surrounding won't be so beautiful, and we will not see so much in it of the divine. Of course, there are moments when we widen the scope of our consciousness and we can see it in nature. We can sense the presence of the divine in everything, in everyone. And these are very precious moments because they are allowing us to believe and to move in the right direction, to love others. There is a way of dealing with others through love, which is not so easy. As Narad, there is Narad, my friend, who told me that mother told him, love everyone. And he says to me, it's not easy to love everyone.
Yeah, but I guess our incapacity to love others also stems from somewhere our deep disconnect with who we are truly. No?
Mm.
because if we connect to that deeper psychic being or that consciousness which is the same in everything else, then there would be possibly no concept of loving someone else. Loving someone else would be like really loving ourselves in the true sense. Love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it is always like this. We cannot love but the divine. And only the divine can love, because love is a very powerful force which is given to us human beings, as it were. We carry it within the heart, within the psychic being. Psychic can love, truly love. We are not speaking about the desire. The desire of nature to have a pleasure is not love. When people say, as Mother somewhere mentions, I maybe quote often this, if people say, I love you, the force which comes, emanates, is the same as I hate you. Because truly speaking, that is not a love force. It is a vital force which wants to appropriate, to make use of, or to use the person as a food for one's own self-enjoyment and indulgence. So in that sense, there is no true love. True love is self-giving, self-giving with happiness. When we aspire truly from the heart, the very aspiration towards the divine, to find the divine, is so peaceful and so mm, self-sufficient. Then when you have that feeling, you don't need any result, because the result is already there in the very aspiration. That very love is already satisfying. The one who loves is loved. That's what I want to say. There is no way to be loved without loving. Yeah. So the love itself is the answer to all the problems. So once we have that love, the self-giving is a normal way of behaving, and that is self-satisfactory. It does not require any other result. So I love you and you don't love me. I loved you, I did so good for you and you didn't do good. That is not love. That is a bargain on the level of vital. Yes, vital is always exchanging. Vital wants to receive for what it gives. It wants an exchange. Love doesn't need that. It is happy to love more and more and more, flame more and more and more, and that is enough for it. And that is how soul, Yajamana, transforms all the nature. We take everything and offer to this love, to this flame, to the higher consciousness. We want to transform everything around us to become part of this magic flame from the heart. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there are several questions here. Shall we
Yes,
look into?
but yes. But before I go into that, I'd love to ask you, just because you spoke of love and also immortality, and you've delved for so many years into Sri Aurobindo Savitri, and contemplated upon that text, which is really this whole conquest of death by love. Would you like to just tell us a little bit, maybe also briefly tell us the story, and then just tell us about what Sri Aurobindo presents through his work, which is also his personal journey in sadhana. So we'd love to hear that dimension. Also, the fact that we take death for granted, and in Sri Aurobindo Savitri, he has a very powerful message on that as well. So I'd be really grateful if you can share your
Sure.
journey on that with that
Uh,
text.
yeah, Savitri. Some of you may have heard or read Sri Aurobindo Savitri is a profound book, the biggest and the most beautiful poetry ever written in the most spiritual way. And the last book, book 10, there is a debate, the canto of the debate of love and death. And that is where Savitri actually wins, conquers death, because Savitri represents that love. which death cannot really understand.
So can I just request you to tell us the story also in brief, because this will be a recording. People will get to hear it, much
Sure.
after. So if you can just tell us the story and then take us through the philosophical achievement of consciousness in that.
Yes, the story is taken from Mahabharata, by the way, and it is one of those few stories of myths of immortality which belong to the Vedic cycle, as Sri Aurobindo says. There are several myths of immortality, such as Nachiketas in Katha Upanishad, or Markandeya from Markandeya Purana, another myth. Or we have the churning of the ocean, yes, which we find in Mahabharata and Puranas. And of course, there are others, yeah, such as Trishanku, there is Shunakshepa, profound myths. We can look into them if we would have time. But Savitri is unique in one way. Savitri story is in Mahabharata when the Pandavas, the heroes of the battlefield, are in exile and they are staying at the lake. And Markandeya reveals himself. Markandeya is actually an immortal rishi, notice, 16 years old immortal rishi who is from the beginning of Kalpa, comes to Pandavas to speak to them. And Yudhishthira asks him, was there someone who suffered so much as Draupadi? Draupadi is their wife. And he says, yes, there was someone. Her name was Savitri. And that is the ancient story, he says. If that is ancient story even for Markandeya, you can imagine that it belongs to the immemorial times. So it's a kind of an archetypal story. And the story goes on in this way, that there was a king Ashvapati, simple story, and he was loved by everyone, but he didn't have a progeny. He didn't have a prince to continue his kingdom. So he wanted to have a son. So he did tapasya. He did what you call sacrifices. For 18 years he did severe tapasya. And at the end of the 18th year, Savitri goddess appeared to him, notice Savitri goddess, and told him, choose any boon. And he said, I want 100 sons. 100. She said, okay, I don't give you 100 sons, I will give you one daughter. And don't argue with me. This is how she said in Mahabharata. So he understood that something is really true in this, and so he didn't argue. He received the boon of one daughter. So the daughter was born. She was very beautiful and very true in her nature, truthful. So when she was 16, nobody dared to ask her hand in marriage. Can you imagine that? Because nobody could feel that he is a match, that he can be a real match for her marriage. So King Ashwapati told her, go and find your mate in the world. So she went for the whole journey in the world. She went through all the forests, all the kingdoms, looked into every corner in the world. In every ashram, she looked for rishis, for saints, for kings, for princes, and never she could find her match for herself. And then when she was ready to go back, in Sri Aurobindo Savitri already, suddenly she stopped being mesmerized by the beauty of the edge of the forest. The wind was magical. And suddenly, from far away, from the edge of the forest, she saw this small figure coming closer and closer to her, and her heart started to beat faster and faster. And then she saw him coming close to her. And she recognized him, and he said, I am Satyavan. And she knew that it was him, the one, the one she was looking for, her match. And that's a very beautiful, the whole book of meeting Satyavan and Savitri cantos are marvelous. where they speak about themselves. She tells him, speak more, Satyavan. She wanted to hear everything about his life. So Satyavan tells her that he is the prince of the king Dyumatsena, who became blind, and by his surrounding was cast out of his kingdom. He lost his kingdom because he became blind and lived in the forest in the ashram. So the king, Dyumatsena, who became blind, lived with his son in the ashram. So he didn't have a kingdom to become a king in the future. So on one side, we have a king who is blind and lives in the ashram, has a son. On the other side, we have a king who has the Ashwapati kingdom, but doesn't have a son. So these two children meet, yeah, Savitri and Satyavan. Savitri, you know, it is the daughter of Savitar, of the Lord of the Sun, the word, the divine word. She represents the divine speech. And he, Satyavan, is the truthful one, is the carrier of the truth. He is the symbol of the soul of humanity. So she tells him, okay, I go home and I will tell my father that I found the match, so we will marry. So she goes home, and at home that time there in Ashwapati's palace there was Narad. Narad is the Deva Rishi, the divine Rishi, who comes down always with some kind of prophecy. So this time also he came down and he asked Ashwapati, where is your daughter? Did you marry her? Did she find somebody for herself? And Ashwapati says, oh, she is coming now back from her journey and she will tell us about her finding. So when they met, she told them that she found Satyavan and it is her choice of her heart, of her mind, and of her word. It's also interesting. These three are combined. Yeah, again, will, heart, and mind. And Narad was very disappointed. He said, you see, you made such a big mistake. This is a very great person. And Ashwapati asks, is he not a beautiful one? He is the most beautiful on earth. Is he not a wise one? He is the wisest on earth. Is he not a courageous one? He is the courageous and the best. So in all degrees, he is the best person, but he has one fault, one mistake. And that is that he will die in 1 year and nothing you can do about it. So her mother, according to Sri Aurobindo Savitri, says immediately, choose somebody else. We can't agree with this. I am against the fate. I am against the destiny. I don't believe in such a world that my daughter has to live only 1 year and her husband will die. But Savitri refuses. She says, I can choose only once. I cannot, and if 1 year is given to me, I also know how to die. So she goes back to the forest, and they live in the forest. His parents, Satyavan's parents, and Satyavan himself do not know anything about his death in 1 year, but she knows. And they live, and she always looks at him. She is counting days. She is totally concentrated and attentive to this event which will happen in 1 year. And before that moment, when Satyavan must die, as Sri Aurobindo says in Savitri, she does tapasya. 3 days she stands without sleeping, without eating, without drinking, day and night. 3 days and 3 nights she stands like a stambha, like a pillar. And when the day comes, when that Satyavan wants to go to the forest to fetch some wood, and she tells him, I am going with you. And he says, no, you had this tapasya, please rest, eat, drink, sleep. You didn't sleep 3 days. You didn't eat anything, didn't drink. And she says, no, I must go with you. He says, no, I can't help. Cannot allow you. Go and ask my parents. If they will allow you, you come. So she went to his parents and she said to them, do you remember me asking you anything during this year? They said, no, child, we don't remember you asking anything. Then she says, and now I am asking you. I have to go with him. They said, okay, if it is such a big thing, you go. So she goes with him, and then uh, when he's cutting wood, he feels suddenly like 1,000 needles or swords are piercing his body, and he falls ill, and he falls at her lap, on her lap, and he feels pain in his head, and suddenly she sees that they are not alone, that there is another figure, the dark figure stands there and looking at them, and it is King Yama coming. And in Mahabharata, she asks, why did you come yourself? Usually you send your messengers, somebody to fetch the soul. He says, the Satyavan is very dear to me and I cannot entrust this work to anyone. So I'm coming myself to fetch his soul. So she speaks to him in Mahabharata about dharma and so on, and he's very impressed with her knowledge and her wisdom. And he tells her, choose any boon except the life of Satyavan and go home. And she says, I want the sight of Dyumatsena, of Satyavan's father. He says, Tathastum, let it be. So go back. So she still follows him and she says, I'm like the thread behind the needle. Where would I go? My husband is taken by you. I'm married to him. And she again speaks about dharma, and he's again very much impressed because this wisdom he never heard from mortal beings. And he again says, choose any boon except the life of Satyavan. She says, I want the kingdom for Dyumatsena, for the father of Satyavan. He says, Tathasto, go back, child. And she follows him again and again speaks even in a higher speech, in the more luminous language, because she is the goddess of the divine word. She is that Gayatri, that Savitri, yes, that word, luminous word which saves. And he is totally impressed, says, choose any boon and go back. Already you went too far with me. And she says, I want 100 sons for Ashwapati. So here he gets his 100 sons, you see, the third boon. And then she again speaks, follows him. She's not leaving. He's again very much impressed, says, choose any boon except the life of Satyavan. And she says, I want 100 sons from Satyavan. 100 sons. Give me 100 sons from Satyavan. And what is interesting, he gives her this boon. I wrote an article on it. I think many people kind of jokingly saying that she is cheated on him. It's not like this. He could not refuse this boon because he already granted the power to Dyumatsena, his back kingdom and vision, which is, as Sri Aurobindo says, the divine mind was restored. Ashwapati as the divine force was restored. And once the divine power and consciousness are restored, then there is a supramental changes to come. And these are the children of Savitri and Satyavan. These are the souls which have to come down before the immortality is effectuated. So he gives her this boon of 100 sons without giving life of Satyavan. And she follows him and speaks even more luminous language. And he is so impressed that he says, choose any boon. And he doesn't mention except the life of Satyavan. And she jumps in and says, may Satyavan live. And he says, let it be. And gives her Satyavan back. This is in Mahabharata. In Sri Aurobindo Savitri, she conquers death. There is the whole fight going on. Very interesting. And I would encourage everybody to read this luminous dialogue between love and death. How she conquered death, how she took back the life of Satyavan. And then they come home and they see that Dyumatsena already is seeing, and then the people from the kingdom came to him and invited him back to take over the kingdom. So the kingdom was restored and she became the princess of that kingdom. That is their story. Unfortunately, it took too long to tell it, yes, but
No, but it was worth every line, every word that you put into that, because I think one of the things that we've lost out in today's world is this storytelling in of these profound stories with their deeper dimension. So I was all rapt attention, and I think many in our audience was, because we have Ratin Biswas using excellent thanks to the organizing team and awesome presentation, and Seema ji couldn't contain herself. She says, "Thank you very much. We never would have been able to get a glimpse of Savitri, but only the team brings us, and the Indica team brings us this Amrita through such eminent scholars." Himanshu ji is also, it was beautiful. Thank you so much. And there's there's a encore now for you, because Seema ji saying, please come back with another session with Sri Aurobindo Savitri alone for us. So it was very, very beautiful. I'll go on to the questions, but I was particularly struck by this connection of this 3 days and 3 nights of absolute tapasya, no eating, no drinking, no sleep, which also recurs in the Kathopanishad of Nachiketa at the door of death. So it's a very interesting thing, because we tend to think of food as being very elemental, very essential for our existence, and we think that without eating and all you will encounter death in a sense. And here they do encounter death, but it seems as if the light of that tapasya pierces through that veil of darkness, if death can be considered a darkness at all. So I was just wondering if you have any light that you might want to shed on this recurrence of this, 3 days, 3 nights, complete tapasya.
yeah, they have to meet death, and to meet death, there is something to be done very heroic by the soul. The soul has to step out, and to meet death, you need this 3 days and 3 nights. They believe that it is exactly the shift between the solstice, yes, the winter solstice, where the shift from the night, the deepest night, to the beginning of rising of light is taking place from the point of view of Jyotisha. But we do not know. The symbolism is profound in a way. Why Nachiketa's 3 days stays also, and 3 nights in the waiting for Yama, and Yama is not coming. By the way, I have to say something about Yama and the Lord of Death in Savitri of Sri Aurobindo. They are not the same beings. Sri Aurobindo never uses word Yama. Notice, he uses all the names, Savitri, Satyavan, Dyumatsena, Shvapati, all the from Mahabharata, but never Yama. And there is a reason for it. First time Natkarniji, he asked me this, we discussed this, why Sri Aurobindo never uses Yama in Savitri? It's something really there. And if you look into Vedic literature, we will see that the Yama is not a lord of death. He is not the killer of the body. He is the savior of the soul. So Yama is the luminous being. It's the first being who died and who found the way back to the source from which we all came as a group soul, as human beings. And Yama and Yami, you remember story, two twins. Yami was left on earth, Yama went to heaven. This is the twins which correlate our constant reincarnation here. Whenever we come to be embodied here from that world, as it were, as souls, we see the light, like blinking of the light, and we plunge into it. And who is correlating that on that side? So I think it is Yami. Yami, that twin sister of Yama. And Yama, when we go back to when we leave our body, die, Yama comes or sends his Sarameya dogs, these dogs with, looking around with 4 eyes, 4-eyed dogs, which are protecting the soul on the way, because that way is very dangerous. There is a tricky way, tricky path. We have to cross that dangerous, vital world where all the creatures are waiting, energetic creatures which would like to fetch us and to, imprison us and to use our energy. But Sarameya dogs protect us on the way to cross that dangerous path, or Yama's messengers. They come and help the soul to come to the psychic world in which we rest, reconsider our embodiment, and make a new plan, and again come to. So this journey back and forth, so to say, is provided by Yama and Yami according to the Vedic vision. And Yama here is a representative of the savior of the soul, who helps the soul to find the way to the place where soul can rest and come back. And not the one who kills the body. Notice. And that's why Sri Aurobindo doesn't use word Yama as the Lord of Death. It's quite interesting to think of. Yama is the luminous sun. He is actually one of the Adityas. Yeah? You remember in the Isha Upanishad, Hiranmayena Patrena, Eka, what is that? Surya Prajapatya, Yama Surya Prajapatya, Vyuha Rashmin, Samuha Tejo Yatte Rupam Kalyanatamam Tatte Pashyami. Yo sao asao purushah sohamasmi. So this is the Yama Surya Prajapatya. It is that Yama. Yama as the representative of the Lord of the Sun, the psychic being. We all come from the Sun. We go to the Sun. Sun is our gateway to the transcendental worlds. If you want to go to the transcendental world, to the beyond, we have to go through the gate of the Sun from which we came as souls. I'm speaking now in the symbols of Vedic tradition. I hope it's not too much.
No, I think we have lost, again, like I said, unfortunately, now we don't have many transmitters of this deeper sense of the Vedic stories. And they have got reduced to primarily the Karma Kanda or, mainly the philosophical ideas. But this living narration of a cosmic story that is unfolding all the time, which the Vedic rishis so beautifully presented in their images. I think your session has been a taste of that glorious
teaser. It was a teaser.
We'll come back. We'll come back once the announcements and all are done to know how people can know much more. To have their whole supper of this, their whole treat of this deep Vedic vision. But I had questions and just the thought that Yama and Dharma, like the Lord of Death, is known as Yama, and you have in the Yoga Sutras the concept of Yamas as Satya, Ahimsa, Steya, Brahmacharya, Parigraha, and also the idea that Dharma. So when we are on the path of adharma, we are adharmic with our bodies, adharmic at our emotional level, adharmic at our mental level, adharmic at different levels of our being. That's when we go into imbalance, the aswastha. We are not in ourselves, because the only way to really know ourselves is that swadharma is to be in alignment in a very profound sense. So, and that's when death occurs, really. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
What is adharma according to what, if we think of dharma and adharma, yes? It's a profound question, adharma. Adharma is a misplacement. Yeah? Thing which has to be in its right place is put into wrong place. And then it plays totally different. It becomes an obstacle, a stumbling block, energy which is kind of not allowing the flow of the truth. So the truth is becoming a stumbling block. So by the truth is covered. By the lesser truth, the greater truth is covered. So truth is covered by the truth, as the Rig Veda says. Yes, and Ritenartam apihitam dhruvam vam. Yes, by Ritam is covered yours. Your truth is covered by the truth. And so adharma is nothing but misplacement in time and space, which has to find its proper placement, proper usage, proper context. And once it is finding, the everything is resolved. The truth can flow through and be embodied in the world. Mm.
And I guess
But
that's, please.
sorry.
No,
Go
over
ahead.
to you. No, you please, please.
Adharma is attracting us for some reason because it's also very interesting why Adharma is attracting us, as Bhishma at the end of his life says. Yeah? I know what is Dharma, I know what is Adharma, but why Adharma is so attracting our attention? Why we want to know what Adharma is? Because we know somewhere deeply within that we we can find the right place for it. We can find the truth in everything. That's why we are attracted to it. We are attracted to darkness, as Sri Aurobindo says, to calculate the incalculable, to find the divine there where it is not, because we know deeply that it is everywhere. That's the catch for us. That's why we are attracted to the darker part, to find the light there.
Yeah, sorry if I can just say this and then I'll take the questions, because I'm going to take the permission of all our participants and our staff and our team that we will extend it a little beyond possibly the regular time, if it's all right with you as well, because there's so many nice questions, and but the content is so profound that I think we'll do injustice by stopping it midway. But and then this will also be there as a repository. It's part of a repository. So we tend to extend time because we think, okay, at least the whole content will be shared and will stay for time. Will reach many people. Yes. So, no, just this attraction, and that's when the mantra, which is Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritangamaya. One of our teachers here, Matri Prasad ji, had once said, or Matribai had once said, that Asataha Ma Sadgamaya. Normally, we think it's from darkness to light, from untruth to truth. But he says that Asataha can also be understood as to the truth of the untruth, which means that behind each of these negatives of untruth or that falsehood,
Beautiful.
darkness, and immortality, within that lies the light behind. Within that lies the truth, within that lies the light, and within that lies immortality. So it's not seeking for it outside. It's not like another place you have to go, but literally dig deeper into the very,
Absolutely.
opposites, which is what you really said. So,
Absolutely. And that is the secret of the Veda. The whole secret of the Veda, which Sri Aurobindo wrote, is about that Angirasa rishis found in the darkness, deep in the darkness, hidden the supreme light. This is something which we lost in time. We believe that light is above, darkness is below. We don't see that we are encompassed in this light. We are embraced by light from all sides, from below and from above. We don't have that vision. We don't see it yet. But the Rig Veda, the Vedic vision, can help us to see this.
and especially the reassurance where they say Amritasya Putraha. You know, we are so bound by our mortality and death as the necessary culmination of a life story, and the Veda overrides all of that and just makes that bold declaration that you are essentially Amritasya Putraha, children of immortality. I think, I mean, it's just so glorious as a vision, as a reminder. Yeah.
Yeah,
So if you, I'll just take some questions because I've
sure.
hijacked it with my own curiosity and my own
Wonderful.
inspiration
Thank
to
you
your
for doing
words.
it.
Yes. So Manojji is saying, and it's connected also very much with what we've been discussing from a different perspective of contemporary reality. He says this was an amazing connect with Vedanta. However, in the current pandemic, how do you look at the way people are perishing suddenly without time to heal? Why is it so? Could you connect this with consciousness not connected with the power within?
There is something what I heard from other people and in India, those who tried to help many people to heal, especially young people. I was very shocked to hear this. Maybe I should not speak about this because it's not my experience, but it is experience of my friend who tried to help many young people to heal and so on. And many of them are becoming very sick very fast and were dying very fast. And they were saying that they don't want to heal. They don't want to come back. Because what would they come back to? To again to these problems, to this, to that, that family demands and this and that. There is no, they are not looking forward to come back to life. And this is very sad. Yeah, in many cases, it is sad. That's why maybe some people found this pandemics as an excuse to finally, depart and to come to the better world in the future. It's some kind of weakness that we are not fighting for this world. From the Vedic point of view of transformation of nature, of course, to cling to the body with egoistic demand to live for your desires and your food and so on, it's ridiculous. Yeah, to cling to the body to transform it with the presence of higher consciousness is something altogether different. Yeah, but yeah, this is a big question of how to be in this embodied state where health, integral health, is not available. Yes, where we have to face the old age and weakness and death. We must face them in some way. We have to deal with these issues since we are talking about healing today. So, uh, how to deal with it? How to to do it right?
Yeah. We have,
Should,
yes.
yeah.
No, no, please, please. I'm sorry.
No, they're just the same. Should we fight for it or should we let go? Maybe both. Sometimes to let go is better than to fight because there is no way out. So then better to re-engage, to come fast back and to start again the journey. It's a big question for me also. I do not have the answer. What is better, really? Okay, go ahead.
Yes,
Please.
I'll sorry. We have Dr. Ananda Balayogi Bhavanani ji, who's also from Pondicherry and one of our very eminent speakers, yoga teachers, therapists, wonderful human being, a very talented person. He's also joined and he's also mentioning that Abhinivesha is so strong, this unwillingness to die. He's saying that even in the wise, says Patanjali, that this holding to life sometimes can be a really strong aspect. So, and we have also, would you like to comment on that or would you like to take the next question?
Well, it is a puzzle. Truly speaking, I think soul decides. Sometimes soul sticks to this body which is already sick and falling apart and nearly in coma, but soul is not leaving. Soul needs to get some experience out of that, some knowledge which it requires for next reincarnations. So it gets what it needs. Sometimes out of the blue, soul leaves nearly in a healthy body. The person lies down and dies. And that is again soul's decision. I think as long as soul is sticking to the body, it will stay, yes, even in the very sick and um, yes, in a bad state of the body. I've seen these cases, and it's a big puzzle. Why the soul is kind of clinging to this life? There is not much to live for or look for. And in other cases, suddenly child dies, yeah, out of nothing, and we don't understand how and why. Just leaves like it was in Auroville, the first Auro son. When Auro son was born, he was a young boy, the first son of Auroville, and he fell into the in a cistern with water and drowned. And they came to the mother very scared, said, first son of Auroville drowned, what shall we do? And mother said, don't worry, he didn't like his body, he is with me. The soul is with the mother, sitting on the lap. He is with me. Go and produce another child, and I will send the soul into the... So they produced another boy, the same couple, and she sent the same soul into that body to embody itself, and it is our son. Now this our son is younger than children, because many children were born after that, so before he was born second time, so he's younger than them, and still they consider him the first son of Auroville, because mother sent him. So there are mysteries. He didn't like something about his formation in the body, so he left his body. Yeah? And some people are staying till the end. So we have to see it from the point of view of the soul. And I agree with this. If person is ready to leave and leaves, then this must be the best. Sorry to speak
No,
so long on it.
not at all. No, we also have I just recently came to know of another elderly lady. She had everything planned a year in advance. And as she was passing, she literally, her husband also recognized the symptoms, because like in the Upanishads, the senses withdraw and you can see the soul leave. You can literally see the prana leave the being. And he said, she was restless, and he said, go and bring the Gangajal and put on her lips. So each of her children came and put that into her mouth, and then she literally quietened down the moment that happened. And each of their children had a chance to say, she had organized everything, what to do,
So
the
nice.
sari she would wear, everything was. So there are, like you said, there are souls that are conscious, and there is some reason, and one does that. Yes, yes. I will. I'll just take on another question by Nitinji here from Auroville, Nitin Vashishtaji. He's saying, greetings from Auroville. I would like to understand the kind of new trajectory that Sri Aurobindo has added through integral yoga from the forms of yoga mentioned in Vedic teachings and Advaita Vedanta in particular. Do you find any contradictions, differences, or any major additions? This is a session in
Advaita
itself.
Vedanta is always a big topic. Um, yeah. Well, as philosophically speaking, there is something to look into. Yes, Advaita Vedanta is a half of the truth, as it were. Yeah? So there is a spirit, half. Why I say half? Because the transcendental has to be realized. The unborn self, Purusha, has to be realized, has to be freed, mukti. We have to achieve that separation of Purusha from Prakriti, yes. What we will do afterwards is a big question. We can stay in that state, yeah, and not come back, as it were, as many people believe that would be the way out. Sri Aurobindo doubts that that is the way out, because there was an intention of the divine to come into manifestation. So since we all souls, agreed, as Kiri Joshi says very beautifully in his story to the children of Auroville. He was visiting our schools, and he was telling children the story that once long ago, we all souls sign a contract with the divine that we will come down on earth and will build the place for the divine on earth. For him, the body, the house. But in the contract, there was a one article: the moment we sign, we will forget about it. So once we signed the contract, we forgot about it. We plunged into the darkness to build the house for the divine, but we don't remember that. So we don't know what we are doing here. But until it is done, we will not be satisfied. This is a good story, which explains that truly speaking, even that mukti, which is beyond, which we receive separation of Purusha from Prakriti, is not a final solution. Though, as you know, the Ramakrishna spoke about two types of souls, yes, Ishvara Koti and Jivan Koti and Ishvara Koti. So they're types, groups of souls. Jivan Koti are those who seek mukti, liberation, and they want to disappear in the transcendental, never to come back. And there are souls which want the realization in order to come back and to build the divine here on earth. And these are Ishvara Koti. And many in his ashram started to speak that they are also Ishvara Koti. They also want the divine to be embodied here. So integral yoga is about Ishvara Koti people who want the divine to be embodied here. The same as in the Veda. Veda doesn't speak about mukti. There is no mukti in the Veda. There is no even word mukti. So rishis didn't look for mukti. They were looking for transformation of nature. They were already muktas. They wanted to change the nature and make it divine, life divine. There is a book of Sri Aurobindo which is called Life Divine. That's what they wanted. And that is the basis of integral yoga. And that is the integral health, final health. I think it's a good point to stop, I guess. It's time to stop. We're already over time. So sorry that we are so long taking time.
All right. So again, there are beautiful questions. There are great appreciations. Himanshuji saying, "Wow, the session gives me the goosebumps, blown away," and hence so many comments. Thank you so much. Gratitude. And we have Radha Raoji also who's saying here that Vladimir ji is thank you for taking us through the spiritual journey through Savitri's story and love the true meaning of Yama. Yama, interestingly, has a very similar connotation to Lucifer's story, and also this bringing of heaven on earth that you talked of, this Ishvara Koti people who want to bring heaven on earth. It's not, the heaven after the afterlife heaven, but really bring it on earth. So I think all these religious traditions had a memory of that original quest, that original promise, and unfortunately, due to the article, we are doomed to forget till we have people like you and others who remind us on such occasions that there is another possibility of remembering and reliving our contract consciously. Consciously, yeah. So again, there are beautiful questions, but possibly if anybody would like to reach out and ask these questions to Vladimir ji, we'll get his details once we come back after the announcements. Please feel free to reach out, and we're always extremely sorry that we are unable to address all your questions because of so many other factors. So, but please feel free. The beauty of this festival is that we enable or we facilitate. We love to act as a bridge that connects the seekers to those who have answers and those who are themselves seeking in different ways, but have more study on these paths. So please feel free to reach out to them. So Vladimir ji, Modaya, I will make the announcement for this evening's program, and then we'll come back to you to know how they can reach out and connect to you, and then we'll request you for a message, your thoughts that you'd like to leave us with. So Koti ji, can I request you to please show the poster for this evening? So this evening, we have a very special dialogue and conversation that has been organized by our partners, the Global Peace Initiative of Women. It's a discussion that's going to happen on healing power of nature. And we have a wonderful speaker, Swamini Pramanandaji, and she's the spiritual head of Purna Vidya. Uh, Very profound insights, a wonderful, very warm Ammaji, as we fondly refer to her. And she'll be in conversation with Daniel Arturo Abreu Mejia, who's a whale cetacean expert from the Dominican Republic. We had him last year as well on a panel, and he's going to share with us his beautiful experience of communicating with whales. So this direct connection with one of the most wonderful giant creatures of the universe. So please join us, stay with us. We try and bring you a diversity of topics and speakers from different backgrounds, because at Indica Yoga, we really try and uphold the authentic, immersive, and transformative nature of the yoga traditions, which is not just limited to the mat and what you do there for a few hours, but it really is all encompassing of life itself. And all life is yoga from that perspective, as Sri Aurobindo says. So, Vladimirji, we're coming back to you. Do let us know how people can reach out. You offer online courses where you delve deeper into each of these subjects. So please let our participants know how they can reach out and get more of your sharings. So would you also like to say it aloud so that it's recorded? Yes.
Right. Yes, of course. We have our courses here at La Grace Center of Sri Aurobindo Integral Life Center in US and India, and there are many projects going on, and you are most welcome to join them. And we have Vedic studies of the Rig Veda especially going on for many years with many groups. Several groups are going on for more than, I don't know, 10 years already, because Rig Veda is so rich, and each hymn takes a few weeks to cover. We are not in a hurry. We are dwelling on each uh, mantra, so to say, going deeper with Sri Aurobindo's keys and to understand what it means and trying to interpret it in psychological way as Sri Aurobindo interprets it, and also linguistic way. I sent you the my email. If you are interested, I will send you the program from our La Grace. You can find. I can also to all of you give the our La Grace Center. It is called lagracecenter.com, one word, where you will find our programs, new perspectives. We have very good speakers, eminent speakers from Sri Aurobindo's background. Quite interesting. All Life is Yoga program, Discovering Sri Aurobindo program, different programs. And courses, study groups, Gita, Upanishads, Vedas. So you will find many interesting things. In case you want to contact, I sent you my email, so please write to me and we can see how we can collaborate. It would be wonderful. It's a wonderful forum to come to, that people are interested in yoga, in the Indian tradition, and looking for answers. Because it's this pandemic's created in us thirst for knowledge. Finally, we are ready.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you for having me, for allowing me to speak in this forum. Indica Yoga, beautiful name. So
I think it's interesting again when we're confronted with death in such an imminent manner. That's when the whole question of life emerges, and the meaning of life is investigated more deeply.
yes, the death is something interesting. Yeah, I'm actually writing an article which is called "What the Death Did Not Know." The Lord of Death did not know, and something interesting in Savitri, he didn't know something. Yeah, he couldn't believe that Savitri wants the realization of supreme in this world, in time and space. He couldn't believe. His major function was not to allow anything to stay here which claims immortality, which claims the supreme being not supreme. And so he is here to clean up everything, to destroy everything which claims to be the supreme, being not the supreme. So he is the protector of the supreme and the highest truth. That's his dharmic, major dharmic role. He would not permit any imitation of the truth unless it is truth. Yeah? So that's his role. That's why he cannot accept anything in between. It has to be totally realized, and then he will give in. Then he will give Satyavan back. Yeah, once the knowledge is recovered, the power is recovered, the supramental manifestation is taking place, this transcendental world is touching our manifestation, that supramental flame comes down, then he will give in. Otherwise, he doesn't have to give in. It is totally right for him not to allow anything in between to come in and to claim the highest truth. So it's the divine utility and the divine economy. He is the divine worker here. And in Savitri, by the way, he is given the place at the end when he is destroyed. Savitri says, live death still, do still my work. There is still work to do for death, not to allow anything which is not ready to claim the highest truth. Great.
Yes, I
Sorry
think that's
to.
a fantastic note to close in. But if you have another message that you'd like to give, but I guess from our side, the work then is this Ishwara Pranidhana that Anand Balyogiji was referring to. That we just have to surrender and become more receptive to that
Yeah.
task at hand. And
Right.
yeah, if I can just read out your contact details so that in case it's not been recorded in terms of the visuals.
Sure.
So Vlad VLAD at Auroville AUROVILLE.org.in or www.lagrace center.com. So please reach out and thank you very much. Would you just like to close on some favorite line of yours from Savitri, and
Oh,
we'll end on a meditative. It's been a very meditative session, as many have felt and expressed very generously here. But
yeah, I may end with the one line, with one sentence from the Pursuit of the Unknowable, the canto from the Divine Mother. And that is 3 lines. All is too little that the world can give. Its power and knowledge are the gifts of time and cannot fill the spirit's sacred thirst. Namaste.
धन्यवादाः.
Dhanyavad.
Sadhara pranam.